We'll be able to sample some of it as we continue with the conversation. Now, matters current affairs. We're looking at state of affairs in the country. What exactly is happening? What has been happening for the past 1 week, over the weekend, and trying to make sense of it today. My guests in studio. I have Jim India, who is seated on my far right. He's a political analyst. Thank you so much for making time.
Thank you
for this conversation this morning here on the Morning Drive. This is your first time here, though, isn't it?
This is my first time, so really glad to be on your studios.
Thank you. I believe that you're going to have an awesome conversation and you come back again. Thank you. Seated next to me is Japheth Ombui, who is the president, Kabila la Vijana. You're not a guest here, man. You're a friend to Lookuptv. Thank you so much, too, for making time for this conversation. Now, state of affairs and looking at what has been happening in the country. Just recently, we had the Yala elections at Parliament buildings. And what happened, to some extent, came as a shocker because there are names that we saw there and were not expected because, because of different political affiliations and what the parties had actually decided. First, before we actually get to what happened, what do you make of the names that were elected to go represent the country? Let me start with you, Jim.
So if you look at in the past, EALA has, we've not heard from people who we sent to EALA. Yeah. So often we've sent individuals to EALA. Last time we sent Oburu Odinga. I think we also sent Kennedy Kalonzo as well. He's going in for a second time. But every time we've sent individuals to EALA, it's been that place. It's been almost like what we do to ambassadors. If you're a politician and you don't have a place for you in the country, we send you outside the country. So it's been that almost retirement place for a lot of members of parliament who don't make it, a lot of politicians who don't make it. Unfortunately, it has reduced the significance of EALA. Because if you think about the regional integration and bringing the region together, we are now about a region that's going to boast of close to 300 million, a population of 300 million. That's a big market. Uganda and Kenya, big trading partners, the trade significance that EALA brings to us, and just integrating this region so that we can now start talking about one currency, ease of trade, reducing the barriers to trade and removing the borders, ease of access to travel from one place to another. That is the job of EALA, that they're supposed to be the legislative arm of enabling us to make policies that fast-track the integration process, which has been on hold for quite a while. So if I looked at some of the names that were sent there, we have a few of them who are quite tried and tested. They have been, Hassan Omar, tried and tested legislator when he was senator for Mombasa, and the rest of them. We have newbies, people who are going to try it for the first time, like Winnie Odinga, it's her first time at a significant role where she's actually required to do the work of legislation. So there's a healthy mix, in my opinion. I don't think there's any qualification for who needs to go to EALA, and so we cannot say that any one of them is unqualified or too qualified. I think at the end of the day, it is, do they have what it takes to do the legislative work at EALA, and they have great technical people at the regional level who assist them to do that job. So I think anybody, even yourself, myself, any one of us, if we were elected, they would have gotten the job done. Yeah.
Okay. Before I come to you, because you mentioned something that is probably to some extent as a country, when we talk about EALA, we make it sound like it's the ground where we go to dump political rejects. Do we now understand the importance of EALA as we speak?
I think with us sending our forces to DRC to take care of the M23 rebels in the DRC and joining forces with the armies in Uganda and the rest of the region, finally we're seeing the significance. We've seen the work that the former president, Uhuru Kenyatta, has been doing up north in Ethiopia. We're seeing what he's doing now in DRC. He has, as Kenya, as a representative of the Kenyan government, he's managed to create a ceasefire in Ethiopia. And now they're on a path of peace and negotiation. He's now in DRC and again talking to the president, Felix Tshisekedi, and the rebel leaders. And they're again trying to have a conversation on how do we ensure that there is peace in this region. Finally, Kenya is sending troops to that region. It's costing us 4 billion shillings to actually have boots on the ground. Yeah. So I think it's dawning on a lot of us, the significance of having a regional integration, that if anything happens wrong up north in Ethiopia or in Somalia, it's affecting our borders. That's how we have proliferation of arms into the northern part of Kenya. You have a lot of bandits who have guns and you're wondering where are these guns coming from. But if you're in a region that's unstable, it's eventually going to get to you. It's eventually going to catch up with you. When you had Al-Shabaab in Somalia, it caught up with us. And we had so many terrorism issues within Kenya. The issues that are going on in DRC, we have our own rebels internally here, the bandits in Pokot. They could easily take cue from the rebels in DRC. So we have to take care of the rebels in DRC so that our rebels don't get ideas on what to do to us.
And that partly actually answers one of my questions, the question that I was going to ask later on in regards to why is it important for us to actually care about, Yala. Let me come to you. What you make of the names that we actually did elect. For you, what does it mean?
Actually, as Kabila Vijana, we were behind Minor, and we were disappointed when the name at first wasn't in the list, because he was our candidate, and we tried to reach some of the MPs that we could by that time, so that we can at least get a youth from the government side, which is the Kenya Kwanza Coalition, to go and represent us. But unfortunately, when the names were read, we were disappointed. But let me tell you, there's what we call
you are the people on the ground, because I'm reading history and the people on the ground were actually doing the work.
But you know, we have what we call the hand of God. Eventually, we saw the hand of God, and the Minor's name popped in, and we got the candidate that we wanted. You know, Yala in most cases has been a place where we send political rejects. And if you look at the impact that as Kenya, in fact, if you ask most youths outside here who were the members of Yala in the last assembly, probably they will only remember Oburu Odinga, because he's the one who was elected, who was nominated to go and represent youth there. And it's high time as a country we start getting people who are going to serve people, who are going to serve Kenya. As what my friend has said, want people are going there to debate and come up with the policies that are going to govern the Eastern African community, because, you know, as time goes, we are becoming a village. The world is becoming a village. The East Africa, we are coming to be a one country. We need people who are going there to represent us, so that you are seeing what's happening in Congo. We are seeing what's happening in Somalia. We need people who are going there to debate policies that are going to help us.
All right. Now, how do we feel their presence? Because I was having this conversation just the other day with one of my colleagues here in the company, and just, random conversation, and they're like, you see, in most cases, when people go there, we don't really hear about them. If you ask people who exactly who are the members of Yala, you literally don't get so many names, just like you put it. So how do we get to hear of them and feel their representation as people that we send out there to represent the country?
You know, it gets a bit difficult, because number one, the motive behind the election, the motive behind the nomination to Yala. You get someone like, for example, Kanini Kega. Kanini Kega has been rewarded because he comes from Central. You had the people from Central saying we had to vote our own. But this so-called our own, which idea does he have to go and represent? Why was he rejected by his people in the first place? We want to get people who are going to serve us, not rewarding people because they're from our tribe, rewarding people because they belong to our political parties. That's why you get it very difficult for us to hear about them when they go. You saw the other side, the NASA coalition. They came up with the Win Odinga, maybe to make Baba relax after the election. You saw Kennedy, the son to
for KK, they said it's institution memory or something close to that.
But why were they nominated? There is a reason behind that. We are people. We are people belong to a faith. The faith behind your nomination. When you are nominated to go and represent people, you go there with the passion, represent what has taken you there. But when you have been nominated to go and because you belong to a certain family, because you belong to a certain tribe, and then that's why we lose the mark.
Okay. Before I come to probably rewarding people who've, regional, from different particular regions because you feel we are not represented or we want a piece of the cake, let me come to matters the youth, because you're looking at this particular list and you're seeing a lot of youth. What does that mean for us as the youth of this country? Is it an opportunity? Are they finally being recognized as people who can actually do something? Or are we just being dumped there because that's what we've seen Yala to be, dumping ground for people who've been rejected politically?
one of the things that has happened in this election, there was significant increase in the number of young people who were elected. And so we've seen a shift. And the reason why there's a significant number of young people elected is not so much because the voter has changed their mind. It's because we had more young people running for elections. So if you have more young people running for elections, then it, mathematically, it increases the number of young people who will be elected. The voter still generally does not trust, especially the older voter, still generally does not trust a younger candidate. If you look at most of the young candidates who are elected directly, they were elected in constituencies that are majority youth. And eventually when IBC, it's just my prediction, but eventually when IBC releases the data, we might see a pattern where anywhere where a young person is elected, there is a chance that more young people turned up to vote. Because interestingly, young people most of the time vote for other young people. And so because there are more young people getting elected in the Senate, at the National Assembly, and significantly at the county level as well, it goes without saying then that those numbers are getting higher and higher. And as they're getting higher and higher, then young people, eventually we're getting to the point where we realize that, one, it is possible to have majority representation without affirmative action. Right, that we can actually, because we've pushed affirmative action, it looks like it's not working in the political parties. If you look at the party nomination list, we're constantly struggling and having to fight with political parties to nominate more young people. We constantly have to go to court and have to, go to the register of political parties. So affirmative action, the legal way, is not working. So then the one way that we are assured of is if we actually turn up to vote, we can get in more young people in. Now, the problem is these young people who we've elected have not been able to translate their election, and we've not been able to see them represent the concerns of young people. So they are young, but they do not necessarily represent the interests of the young people. But also as a constituency, we have not defined our interests. So you have a lot of these young people who are saying, yes, I am youth, but we tell what then is the interest of young people? And the number one interest that comes up is jobs. Right? Just at the top of your head. It's jobs. That more than anything, young people just want jobs and they want a source of livelihood. So that's why for me, taking these young people to EALA is significant. That if they understand that the number one priority of young people across this region, you talk to young people across this region, unemployment is the number one risk that we are facing. So if they understand that, then they would be fast to then fast track the process of integration. They would be fast to, we have the African Free Trade Agreement, which essentially should open the borders across the continent. But we need to domesticate that at the regional level. You remember when there was Brexit, one of the things that was happening at Brexit is they had to negotiate a trade deal. They had to see how would the European country, there was a significant shift in what's the trade deal? What are we getting out of this Brexit deal? And so as a country, we have to go into EAC and think, how many jobs are we creating for young people in Uganda? If we have an issue of farmers struggling with their maize, and we have an issue of sugar, how are we getting sugar into Kenya? How many jobs is it creating? If that is the notion that we have, then we would feel the significance. Unfortunately, that's not the case. It's been a political reward system. You see, a lot of these guys, it's a political reward system. Kenyans, we are on our own. The politicians are a small club of each other. They love one another.
Is there a hope of actually changing that?
There is hope. I can't say that there's no hope. But Kabila la Vijana will probably be at a better place.
For the first time in this country, Brian, we are seeing leaders who are elected based on what they're able to do, what they can do. And as what my friend has said is, for the first time also we had a number of youths who were vying, and which increased our chances of getting youthful leaders. And I want to thank people like the Mumias East Member of Parliament who has hit the ground running, is working. And a number of the youthful leaders who are elected, I can confirm to you, they are really working. What I want us to do, and what I want the government to do, because there's a time we had a president, we were talking to the president, telling the president that it's a time whereby we need to look beyond the families and the political leaders who have been there since. It's high time we give chances to fresh blood. We've seen people like Babu Owino working. We've seen people like the Member of Parliament for Langata, Felix Odor, Jalango, working. That only shows us that if we can give youths a space to work, if we can give them a chance, then we have an opportunity turn things around in this country.
Okay. Something just to that, and this I'm putting across to all of you, this notion of how do we measure our leaders are working? Because somebody said, if you go there, you work in silent, we don't hear you speak, then you're not working. In this country, when it comes to matters representation, the loudest, the member of parliament, that is how we measure whether they're working for the people or not. We need to hear you on TV. We need to hear you, insulting somebody so and so, coming out to say no to something, even if it's not, even if you don't mean it to some extent, just so that you can be heard.
But if you look like someone like Jalango, you never see Jalango shouting and abusing people. You will see Jalango working.
Okay.
If you look at people like, yes, Baba Win is so vocal, but it's in the public domain.
Okay.
We've seen Baba Wino working, though I was not supporting him.
Yeah.
He was in a coalition that we were not supporting then. But the man is working. If you look at people like Salasia, kando na vipindi mingi, but you see the man is
working on the ground.
It's. I think we are now mature enough as a country to know who is working and who is not working.
Okay. And I think just to add on to that, we. And the IBC, because it's the mandate of the IBC to do a lot of voter education and civic education, they, and together with the civil society and the media, together we've not done a very good job of educating the public.
Okay.
That's why you have a senator being not re-elected because people say he did not work. Yeah. Because people did not see a bursary that he gave, people did not see a road that he constructed. But that's not the job of a senator. Right? The job of a senator.
That's why we're fighting for CDF, because it needs to come back. Not necessarily because people are going to get bursaries or all that,
because
somebody needs something to go and sell to the people and say, 5 years, you took me there for 5 years, and this is exactly what I did.
Here's the road. So we need to do a better job of educating our public, because if the public and the citizens understand the role of each member at the different levels, at the national and at the county level, then we stop placing unnecessary demands on politicians, because I think we do place unnecessary demands on politicians. Okay. And that is how we end up with a lot of corruption in this country. Okay. Because how do you expect a politician to be coughing 2 million every weekend when they go to the village? Contributing to every harambe, to every... Because now we've turned them into people taking care of our social problems. All our children who need to go to school, who are sick, those are people. And if they don't do that, we don't elect them after 5 years. But where are they getting that money from? There's no budget for social work. Their salaries don't amount to that. They must be getting this money from somewhere. Yeah. So we open a window. If it's going
out, it needs to be coming in at the same time.
Yes, we open a window for corruption. Okay. Because then they have to meet this need. And it's because the citizens don't understand there's a difference between what the job and what they should be doing. But also the citizens don't have a source of livelihood to take care of themselves. So we're in this cycle of, this vicious cycle, which ultimately renders us as a poor nation, because we can't get out. Right. We just can't get out. Okay.
Let me come to you. In this, Jane actually partly answered it in terms of why the youth should actually care about Yala, because you're being told you're the leaders of tomorrow, and you're looking at, leaders of today rather. You're looking at the list of names that we have submitted to Yala, and most of them are youth. Why should somebody sitting at home, 25, 26, 27 to 35 or 40, be concerned about the representation that is happening at the East African Legislative Assembly?
Yeah, as youth, we need to be concerned with whoever is nominated to Yala, because, number one, when we were talking to Maina yesterday, I told him, number one, we've given you the exposure that you are looking for. We're exposing you, you are going to meet other members of parliament from other countries. From there, you can also create opportunities for our youths in other countries. Job opportunities in Kenya are very minimal compared to the population that we're having as youths. And we do not need a miracle for a youth to get an opportunity in Kenya. We can also expand our minds, expand our territory, so that we can also get jobs. For us, number one, as Kabila Vijana, we want to get as many youths as possible to work within and outside Kenya. Okay. Because I think if you can solve the unemployment issue, then you can get, at least you can get youth to relax. Because, an unemployed youth is a very dangerous youth. A youth who is not earning is a very dangerous youth. And that's what as Kabila Vijana number one we were fighting for, to ensure that every youth is busy. An idle youth can do anything. And for us, just from the Kabila Vijana side, our number one focus was to get one of us to go represent us, get connections outside, come back, get some of our youths from our villages, from these slums, at least to connect them to other jobs outside here. At least that exposure can really help us so much. Right. That's why I feel youths should be concerned and really follow on what's going on in Yala. Yeah.
Let me come to you, Jim, before we move to now the matters of region. When you sit down, you see these 9 members of the East Africa Legislative Assembly go to work. What is it that you expect by the end of their tenure you'll be looking at and say, now this is something that I was hoping would happen, and it did happen?
One, they would fast track the instruments that we need to attain full regional integration. And that is do all that they need to ensure that all countries are happy with the trade agreements that will be there. If we need to adopt a one currency situation, if they will remove the barriers, travel barriers across this region. I don't understand why we need to have visas to go to, Ethiopia and the rest of them. If they can remove those barriers to travel and movement, and then open the different markets, because that's the legislative job that nobody, it can't be done. Governments can sign deals, but ultimately IALA has to pass the piece of legislation that enables that to work. So I think for me it is that, the instruments that are needed for regional integration. But also number 2, and significantly, is that they also need to prioritize the issue of climate change. Because as a country, we cannot say that Kenya is going to plant, how many numbers did the president say? 5 billion, 30 billion? 5 billion trees, and attain 30% forest cover, while across the region our neighbors are messing with the environments and they're cutting trees. It needs to be a concerted effort, because if we don't get rain here, there's going to be a problem in Uganda, because we share a lot together. We're sharing the Mombasa port, for instance. But also number 3 rather, and finally, it is we need the infrastructure bit of it. So the infrastructure has to be about the railway. Does it get to Uganda, and how fast can we get it to Uganda? How do we connect more flights that are connecting? We have, I think, 2 flights right now, 3 flights that connect to Entebbe every day. How do we get more? Because if the transport, there are more flights, more trucks, more trains going, then it means more goods and more people are moving. And that means that then in the economy, there's a lot of circulation of money. So for me, those 3 fronts would be significant. And of course, they would then need to touch on the issues around security and democracy.
All right.
Yeah.
Before we go for a break, let me just touch on this last part of this particular conversation. When it comes to matters, whatever happened in Parliament, we've seen Governor Kahiga says, now we decided to rally behind our own. And, to some extent, we did not like the lineup that came from, when the president and the members of the Kenya Kwanza team actually had that meeting and decided that these are the people that we are fronting, and the top 5 should actually be elected. We went ahead and did our own thing. What do you make of that first? Are we seeing probably cracks in Kenya Kwanza?
I don't see any crack because, Brian, we are mature enough as a country now not to be dictated by the executive on what to do. The president should not dictate to anyone whom to nominate and who not to nominate. We are free. And I can also say the Mount Kenya people were free to elect whoever they wanted. And that's where we get it wrong any time we are dictated on who to nominate or to elect to a certain position. On this one, I support them.
You support them for going against that and saying, okay, this is exactly the person that we need. But it also raises the question, Jim, where we say, as a region, we decide, I'm taking this from what has been happening and what we've seen on TV, where they say our own. When we say we want to reward somebody because they are our own, and probably the party says, we are fronting this one because this is the right person for this particular job. Where do you draw the line when it comes to that?
So one, I think it exposes the fallacy that is Kenya Kwanza, and it shows it's Kabila Kwanza, that it is my tribe first. And as a country, we are first tribal before we are Kenyan. And I know that there will be a lot of debates, and a lot of Kenyans don't like hearing that. But we first think tribal, then we think Kenya. And when you hear people say it is the main motivation where a lot of voters vote is tribal alignment.
Okay.
It is, and if you look at the patterns, even in the last election, and NASA, and in 2017 and 2013, if you look at the patterns and how people vote, you can easily tell. It's the economy is secondary.
Yeah.
The economy comes number two. Number one, it's our tribe and our representation. And I come from a school of thought that does not think that there's anything wrong with that. I think every country has a system of governance. In the US, you have Democrats and Republicans. You're either born a Democrat or you're born Republican. Yeah. And that's how they vote. It's just their system of organizing themselves, right? You come to Kenya, it is tribe. It is whether you're Kikuyu or you're Kalenjin, and that's how you vote. The problem is, how then do we then translate that once we're done voting, can these individuals that we voted for on tribal lines get the work done for us? Okay. Can, for instance, a president, like President William Ruto now, rise above his Kalenjinness, rise above the Kikuyus that voted for him, and finally take up a national outlook as the president of the country? Can the members of parliament then realize that they are serving the National Assembly of Kenya and not a national assembly in a village somewhere? Right. That needs to be the difference. But I don't think there's anything wrong with voting for your own person. I mean, it's your right anyway. Right, we can't tell you, because if it's a democracy, then you reserve the right to choose. You reserve the right to choose however you want to choose.
That's exactly what he said. He said it is a democracy, and that actually shows how democratic the party is. That's the statement that came from the Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua yesterday. Okay. We want to take a short break here on the program. Don't go too far. When we come back, we'll be looking at something else that has been making headlines this weekend and today, and that is the GMO debate. Don't go too far. We'll be back in a moment.
Good to have you join us on Heart to Heart.
We bring you stories of people who, despite the pressures they experienced, still trusted God to see them through.
The seeds that was sown in me helped me navigate and overcome that period of my life.
New testimonies, new insights, and even better revelation of the good things God has in store for us.
There is always a blessing waiting for someone in every episode.
Vera Beauty and Fashion College is focused on being the leading technical and vocational training institute in the region. Our team possesses in-depth knowledge and extensive experience in the industry, offering thorough training in cosmetology, hairdressing, interior design, creative arts, training of trainers, nail technology, and fashion design. With branches in Nairobi, Thika, Meru, Eldoret, and now in Mombasa, our courses ensure that learners are completely equipped with knowledge, competency, and employability skills. Enroll today to be a part of a center of excellence.
Welcome, you're watching The CEO. On this show, where we invite masters, captains of industry.
It's all about working in teams. Customers are happy, it's a good month, the markets are good. I mean, those are very exciting moments.
Ladies and gentlemen who tell us where and how to find money and put money in our pockets, and how to go about doing business in the best possible way.
For me, I'm not serving myself, I'm serving community.
Hapa Kazi Tu inaendelea kuwasaka na kuwatambua wale ambao wanafanya kazi extraordinary na zile kazi za kujituma.
Biashara yote unaambiangwa, as long as you have a plan, you can do it. Our service is about kufurahisha the customer.
Mpenzi mtazamaji, hii ni Hapa Kazi Tu.
The Healing Jesus campaign is coming to Kenya. Join evangelist Dag Heward-Mills as he preaches the gospel of salvation with miracles, signs and wonders. The campaign will be held in 2 towns, Tika on the 29th of November to the 1st of December and Nyeri from the 2nd to 4th of December at 4 p.m. each night. There will also be a dynamic gathering for pastors dubbed Identifying Dangerous Enemies Conference during the mornings of the Tika campaign from the 29th of November to the 1st of December. In addition, there will be a pastors conference on the 3rd of December, which is the 2nd day of the Nyeri campaign. For more information and registration, please call the numbers on the screen. +254 792 123 789 or +254 724 049 619. You can also visit the website ideckenya.org. Kenya will never be the same again after this encounter with the Anointed and His anointing through the Healing Jesus campaign. We will see you there.
All right, now thank you so much for staying with us here on the Morning Drift. Remember, continue engaging us on our socials. That is at Amoy Brian on Twitter, at Lookuptv. The hashtag this morning is the Morning Drift. We are looking at state of affairs in the country, matters, current affairs, and right now, some of the conversations that are actually happening want to do with the East Africa Legislative Assembly. Before we went for a break, that is what we were talking about. Right now, we want to delve deep into the current debate, and that is the GMO debate. Yeah. The opposition leader Raila Odinga came out and said the government should actually do public participation and have a robust conversation around it before allowing 10 million bags of GMO maize into the country. Let me engage my guests on this particular discussion. You know, I have no idea where to start, but we just have to start anyhow. Yeah. First, this is a conversation that is happening currently. What do you make of it first? Let me just get to understand what you make of it from where I sit before we get into the politics of it.
On this one, I agree with the Right Honorable Raila Odinga. Yeah. We must conduct a robust and we must have public participation on GMO because at first, there's a year, I think it was during President Toro's regime, we had the same discussion about GMO and the cabinet then banned the importation of GMO to this country. Later on, President Ruto has come and they want to come in with the same again discussion. You know, for me, I've been against the importation of GMO because I understand from the knowledge that I have is that I understand GMO come up with a foreign gene that causes some body reactions, the allergies in our bodies. And that those also believe about cancer because anytime we introduce a new gene, a foreign gene to your body, then there is a reaction. So I don't see why the government wants to come up with something that we've not had a discussion and agreed on it. Okay. Yeah.
Listen, Jim, the concerns that Japheth here is raising, those are some of the concerns that people do have. But what is on the ground and what the government is saying, we've looked at the study, it has scientifically and all that. We cannot find any reason as to why we should not allow it and things like that. And here we are right now. We are talking, we are not even, it's not a conversation that we say we should be having whether we can actually have GMO, genetically modified organisms into the country. Just the other day, CS Trade said we've already, 10 million bags of genetically modified maize is actually on its way here in the country. And somebody was arguing this morning and saying, when a cabinet secretary stands and says, it is coming, it is already here. It's not like it's on its way, it's already here. So it's not a conversation we are having. This is something that's already probably in the country as we speak.
That's true. I think also to just be honest with ourselves, we've been consuming a lot of GMO without knowing.
Okay.
A lot of the chicken we eat in this city it's GMO. Okay. It's not Kienyeji chicken. A lot of you who think you're eating Kienyeji, it's not Kienyeji chicken. You buy chicken that is being raised within 3 weeks and it's ready for consumption. That's a GMO chicken. The concerns of the public are genuine, and they're genuine concerns that people have. And the fact that scientists are split on this matter, You know, if it's a good thing, scientists normally just rally around it and say, yeah, this will work. You need a vaccine for malaria, yeah, we agree that this will work. Or a vaccine for HIV, scientists agree. But the moment that the scientists are split on a matter, it means that there's need to interrogate further. Yeah. But beyond it, do we even have the infrastructure to take care of the after effects, the health effects of you know, cancer, for instance, that he's talking about, and any other related occurrences that might happen? Because the thing with GMO is basically you're trying to balance between food security, which is a problem we are currently having as a country, that millions of Kenyans are going hungry. But you also have to balance on the other side with the health effects of bringing these kinds of foods to the country. And so you have a government that's saying we can't plant, our agriculture is rain-based. We can't plant maize fast enough to feed our people. We can't stand by and watch people die. We can't stand by and watch animals just die like that. We have to do something. We have to protect life at all costs. The only problem is a lot of Kenyans do not see that. We come from a relatively conservative society, and that has to be come to fore. If this goes to public participation, I can assure you that majority of us will say, we do not want GMO. We do not want it. But the government has a responsibility of doing a balancing act that's difficult. And I wouldn't want to be in the president's shoes right now, because it's a difficult balancing act to do. How do you feed your people? But also, how do you keep them healthy?
How do you keep them healthy? Let me come to you, Jaffa. This is the thing. One of the things that I actually look at, and because what Jim is mentioning is something to do with food security, and that has been the subject of it. We say, okay, people are going hungry, we need to feed them. Why not have this inside the country? But this is the thing. Have we exhausted all the avenues when it comes to dealing with the issue of food security here in the country?
No, we've not exhausted all the avenues. No, just the other time, I was watching someone with a lot of cabbages, vegetables, in his store. We've got farmers who are complaining. They had a lot of maize in their stores, which the government was not buying from them. You know, the issue of rushing getting GMO is, I can say it's another scandal in making. Let us exhaust all the avenues. Let us exhaust all the ways that we can as a country before we rush on importing things that we are having doubts on. At first, the government began the exercise well by getting fertilizer to farmers. You know, we cannot get food to save people from hunger at the same time introducing. I heard Moses Kuria talking of we've got so many ways of dying in Kenya, so there's no problem introducing another. So the reasoning behind the importation of the GMO food, and yet we've got farmers who are complaining they have maize in their stores. We've got farmers who are complaining they've got enough food. It's questionable in a way.
But it's also a lack of imagination on the government side. I've been talking with nutritionists who say they are not part of the conversation on food security. Anytime we think about hunger and starvation in this country, we think about maize and beans. That's the first thing. Anytime you see they've been flagged off, it's maize and beans. It is low on nutrients. It gives you carbohydrates, which is the energy that you need. But these people, more than anything, they need it's not quantity, it's the quality of the food. Are they getting the necessary nutrients that they need to actually survive? And their bodies become resistant to diseases and they can live longer. And so we don't involve nutritionists to say, look, we might not need to give a whole bag of maize to someone who's going hungry. Where do they get the strength to even boil the maize and beans, which takes hours to boil? Where do they get the firewood? Because majority of them are using firewood and not gas. These people are dying. By the time it's done, they will be dead. So how do we, you know, it's just a lack of imagination to see how, I've seen places where it's just a packet, it's just a small packet that's given to families, and that packet has all the necessary nutrients that you need. It has all your vegetables, all your vitamins, all your proteins, and your carbohydrates, and it enables you to live longer. So it's a lack of imagination. What we did is we went to Galana Kulalu and planted maize, and then of course it turned into a scandal later on, because anytime in this country we think about food security, you think about maize and beans.
Maize. So we need to move away from that.
Yeah, yes. We need to move away from maize and beans.
Okay.
And we need to talk to the right people.
To the right people.
So not just anyone.
Not someone who thinks, not someone who thinks that we need to introduce another way of dying. Those are not the people we need to talk to.
Okay.
They might be cabinet secretaries, but they need to talk to people who we have Kenyans who are smart enough and they know how do you go about ensuring that we have food security and people are eating nutritious food in this country. It might not have to go the GMO way.
Talking about talking to the right people, I saw somebody argue today in terms of the current CS chair that we have, the kind of comment, and that is something that you've actually alluded to, he made if we had somebody who was a technocrat in that particular position, we will not be seeing things like this, making reckless comments in regards to that.
You know, Moses is known to be very reckless ever since. And I'm one person who questioned when he was nominated by the president to hold that office, because we know Moses Kuria is someone who just speaks because people need to hear. And we don't need people who are reckless, and more so when you are holding a position like what Moses is holding now. You need to be very careful. You need to consult. It's not necessarily we have technocrats in those positions, but if you are wise enough, you need to have people consult before you come public.
Okay.
You need to know what to say in public and what not to say. Remember, we are in a situation whereby the country is in dire need of food, and we don't need people who are carelessly talking. We need people who are careful on what they're saying.
All right.
Yeah.
Let me bring in something else, and this has also been, brought to the public limelight, where the opposition actually says the government seems to be dancing to the tune of the Western world when it comes to matters GMO, because the way they're moving in a hurry to have it in the country is actually, something that needs to be questioned. And we saw one of the philanthropists, and that's Bill Gates in the country, and actually saying, I do take this, and there's nothing wrong with this. So if you can go ahead and actually do it. I'm not saying that probably if we do it, we are going to be as rich as he is. That's But listen, that's what happens most of the time. When you speak to people that are, lack of imagination, like you say, and they say, this is the richest person on earth. So if he actually is taking it, then then maybe I could actually get whatever he's getting from that and be as rich as he is. But that's beside the point. Are we dancing to the tune of the Western world? Let me come to you before I come to you.
Unfortunately, when I listen to Bill Gates, the rest of us don't have the luxury of being billionaires and trillionaires to afford the best healthcare in the world. That would, whatever effects come to us, we can take care of it. We don't have that luxury as a people. But are we dancing to the tune of the Western world? We definitely are. And the signs are all over the place for us to see. Okay. I started out by saying our economy was on a downhill. We were nose diving. And this economy right now is being dictated by international financial institutions and not necessarily the central bank. You have the IMFs in this country, you have the World Banks in this country who are determining which direction we should take. They're determining when government should freeze hiring. They're determining that we should privatize water, for instance. You've had government saying that we're going to have private sector guys distribute water. They're determining the tariffs that are being charged on electricity. They're determining subsidies that are being reduced or added. They're determining every part of this economy right now because we're on a nosedive. And the other day, they gave us a loan. We received a loan from the IMF. And we know that IMF, unlike China gives a lot of unconditional grants. IMFs and the World Banks, they give loans with conditionalities. And their conditions are usually, we are coming in, we are helping you set up, we want to see how you're spending your money. But beyond that, so there's that we have to dance to their tune because the international financial institutions are mostly European and American. Okay. But on the other side, you also have, on the announcement of who the president was going to be, if Kenyans were curious enough, you'd notice that there was a huge European presence at Bomas on that day. Okay. And they had a lot more interest and stake in what was happening in this country. For 10 years, President Uhuru had looked east, and he was in China. Yeah. And we did business with China for 10 years. And for the European countries and the Americans, this is an opportunity for us to start looking west again. And so they were more than ready to ensure that we are looking west. And so if you've seen, the president is yet to go to to the east. He's been to the US, he's been to the UK, and everywhere else, and he's championing a lot of ideas that are Western in nature. And so it's a geopolitically, it's a shift in policy from look east to look west. And because we're receiving grants from them, they're giving us GMO food. 10. Nobody has asked how much it's costing us to get the 10 million bags of GMO. Nobody has asked, and somehow it's not come out that how much are we spending as a country to get the 10 million bags of GMO foods. So unfortunately for us, that he who feeds you determines what you do with your life, because they feed you, and so we are at their mercy, unfortunately.
All right, and this is something because when we banned GMO, I believe about 10 or 12 years ago, one of the countries that was actually, you know, against that was the United States, which is say, by the way, if you're going to ban this, then you're going to actually, you know, cut off feet when it comes to importing foodstuff to your country, because most of the things we do are genetically modified. So let me come to you. Just the same question I asked Jim in terms of, because it's an accusation that actually the opposition has thrown to the government and say, you actually are dancing to the tunes of the Western countries. Why are we doing that?
You know, in Africa, it's either you are dancing with the Western or you're dancing to the East, with China. And it didn't begin just with President Ruto. This is something that has been there. We saw President Kibaki was working very close with the European countries. Then came Uhuru Kenyatta, who turned his eyes to the East. And as things are, then President Ruto also is working with the Western. And as what my friend has said, whoever feeds you controls you. And that's where we are as Africa, because we depend on these countries for the progress of our countries, for any development. Remember, Kenya, we are running at a depth whereby we cannot run a country with the tax that we are collecting. We need to get loans. We need to get grants from these people. We need to consult them on so many issues. And that's why you get the US and the UK. When President Ruto was elected, you saw them in the country. In fact, you saw them sending even the people to come and at least, because Kenya, during Uhuru's time, we had turned our eyes to the East. It was their time to come and get, it was their time to come and get President Ruto and work together with him. And I think that's what has led us even to the GMO, because as what you have said, USA warned us. If we don't import GMO from their country, then there's so many things that we're not going to do together. And that one explains where the GMO issue is coming from.
Because immediately we had the swearing in, then this conversation started coming up. And that's when we were like a debate in the country. How are we lifting the ban? Did we have a conversation on the same?
By the way, Brian, if you remember when the GMO debate was, I think it was 11 years ago, when the cabinet banned the importation of a GMO, that's where things started going with the US. That's when President Uhuru Kenyatta started going to the East, because it was a demand. You have to get this to your country, you have to import this. And when we've given them an okay, that's when we started seeing them coming.
Listen, on this conversation, which is the direction that we should be taking to make sure that, yes, we do have a robust conversation, every other Kenyan is involved when it comes to this particular matter?
I think ultimately, so majority of our land is arable. That is one of the things that we do, that we need to really appreciate. But unlike the West, where most of the land, they can't plant anything on it. Most of our land is actually arable, and we can actually plant commodities on it and grow it naturally. The best way to go for me would be to take advantage of what God has given us, which is beautiful land, and now start to do things like irrigation, because clearly with climate change we can no longer rely on rain. That's just the reality of the matter. And because for a long time we've been relying on rain, and we've been able to feed our people through rain. Now, because of what mainly the West have done through industrialization, and they have destroyed the environment, we're now suffering the consequences, and we're having either no rain at all or too much rain that we can't control. The direction for many governments to do it, we now need to start digging dams and ensuring that we're able to then now irrigate, but also diversifying our crops and saying, look, maize and beans sounds wonderful, sounds great, we love it. But do we have commodities that can take 2-3 months to grow and that would still feed our people well?
Okay.
How do we grow different varieties of potatoes, for instance, which are a great source of nutrients?
Okay.
And how do we grow more and more vegetables as well? It is, you see, food security is not an issue that, it's not an ad hoc issue, and we're treating it as a small issue of just GMO. We're not talking about food security, we're talking about generations to come. We are saying we want to feed a generation GMO till they turn 18. A child born today, we want to feed them GMO until they turn 18. We're going to have issues of obesity before we know it. It's going to be a pandemic. We're going to have so many carcinogens introduced into our bodies that the cancer that we're dealing with now will be different when we're dealing with it then.
Okay.
So for me, the best way to go about it is we have great arable land, do more dams, introduce our people to irrigation, bring back the agricultural extension officers that we had back in the Moi days, who used to go to farmers and teach farmers on how to plant different varieties, and our land used to do well. That's the direction to go. And with devolution, we can do it because, you know, agriculture, just ensure agriculture is fully devolved well. Every county plants what it's good at. Every county has its own product, has its own crops that it's growing, and you do well at that. Now, if you have 47 counties, each growing what they're really good at, how are we not able to feed our people?
Okay. I want to throw this because he says, you want to feed a generation. You know, for the next 18 years, you want to feed them on GMO. Maybe the people that are making those choices right now and those decisions right now will not be there at that particular time to actually see what it is doing to us, maybe. But this is the thing. How do we get then the people involved in this particular conversation and make them understand that it is important to have this conversation moving forward? This is the kind of direction that we should be taking and actually move in unison. How do we make every other Kenyan so concerned about food security and, try other avenues just apart from...
You know, Brian, what we are lacking is the government goodwill.
Okay.
We need, we are hearing issues with the lack of food in the country, but when you visit places like Kitale, because when people are crying of hunger, there's a time I had a trip to Kitale, and I saw farmers planting there. We had sweet potatoes, we had maize, we had rice. You see, what we are lacking is a proper plan from the government, a good plan. We've got farmers who are working very hard. We've got farmers who are planting food. We've got enough food in this country. What we're having is a proper plan by the government to ensure that there is food security in this country. Okay. And the only thing that can be done by the government to ensure that everybody is on board is let them come up with a way whereby they engage farmers directly. Okay. Let us get food from our farmers. Let us buy food from our farmers. Why are you importing? Like, I saw Senator Cheragai complaining of the government wants to import maize from outside, yet our farmers are having maize in the stores.
Harvested and
they have harvested, there's food. Yeah. Why do you want to import food from outside, yet we're having food in our stores? Okay. I think that's where the government should start. Let us start getting food from our own people first, before we start importing.
Before we start importation. Now listen, what is this doing to that farmer there who is looking at it and saying, today I have harvested this much, I'm going to sell to the government, but they turn around and hear the government say, by the way, we have 10 million bags coming in. What is that doing to the kind of, to the farmer himself and actually the kind of production that we are having in the country in terms of food security?
So it reduces the morale of the farmer, number one. But two, it could also be a tactic the government wants to buy cheap from farmers. Okay. Because remember, farmers had refused for quite a while to sell to government. And they said the amount of money that they're using, the input into farming, is too expensive for them to sell a bag of maize at 2,500 or 3,000. Then you'd sell it at 4,000 a bag. And government wasn't willing to buy from farmers at that price. And so farmers held on to their maize. And so you have all these bags of maize being held onto by farmers. And then you have a government that's saying, well, you hold on to your maize. You're going to bring in 10 million bags of GMO. And then you stay with your maize for as long as you want. And remember, there's another harvest. We now have the short rains. And so most farmers in Kitale and the rest of the country, all over Trans Nzoia and in Mumias, are now planting. So it means in the next 6 months, by the time we're getting to June, actually not even June, around April, we're going to have harvest. So you have bugs in the store, then you have all these new needing that you have to harvest,
want
where you don't know what to take it.
Okay.
And so it's just a frustration. How do you say that you want to grow the economy bottom up? Whereas the people at the bottom are now frustrated, they have goods.
Okay.
They're already entrepreneurs enough, they are farmers, they have goods they want to sell to you, but you don't want to buy from them because you're saying they're too expensive, but you're willing to spend on foreigners and get us GMO. I mean,
so it's kind of double speak. We want to help you, but at the same time, you're not willing to do that.
We can't solve food shortage in the country by importing maize from outside. Yet we've got a solution within us.
Okay.
Let us exhaust the solution from within before we go outside.
Okay.
And remember the last time there was a Mexico issue, there was some maize from Mexico, which arrived here in record time. It arrived here in a couple of days.
And that's when I started, I say that when the CS says it is coming, it's
already here.
Because you say it's coming from Mexico, but it was like, so Mexico is just across the corner, so how did that come about?
And remember that our politics, unfortunately, we do politics even with food. Yeah, there's even the politics of food, that there are people who have significant interest in food in this country, and they make a lot of money out of food in this country. And so by the time you're hearing GMO, other than the international relations between Kenya and the West, there are also Kenyans who I know will benefit from that trade. There are Kenyans who've already gone and have already imported and have already bought that GMO maize and are serious about it. And they might be Kenyans who put a lot of money into campaigns, because remember, we're just from campaigns. People need to be paid back their money. So I would not be surprised. I would not be surprised if the politics of food is also taking place in this conversation.
All right. Yeah. Let me, as we wind up this conversation, because I'm actually out of time, just your parting shots in regards to, if at all it's going to come in, because we are at a point, maybe even if we try to push, it could already be here already. How do we stay safe and just make sure that you consume what you feel like it is right for you? Because to some extent, they say you can't differentiate. This is GMO, this is the legit thing. It looks more or less the same. So how do we actually ensure our safety at the same time?
I think let the government, I saw in one of the US supermarket whereby the GMO food and the natural food are not mixed. So you make a choice on what you want to buy and on what you want to take. I think let the government give us that freedom, because I know, as what you've said, the GMO food, eventually it will be in the country. But let them give us let them give us the freedom to choose on what we want to consume.
Okay.
Yeah.
Jim, as you wind up your partition.
So I think the thing about GMO is ultimately the seed is the most powerful thing in any plant. If you control the seed, and that's what GMO is. It's that you have all these big companies that have patented seeds. Like you cannot just plant a GMO seed. There's someone who has the patent to that seed, and they can sue you for planting it. And a lot of GMO plants don't give you seed. So you plant it, but there's no seed, because you can't regrow it. If you want seed, you have to go back to the company. So if people control the seed, then essentially, as you're saying, they control you, because all foods, all plants ultimately start from the seed. So we have to be careful on what we are introducing here. We might be introducing a dependency that we will not be able to get out of. This might be the new colonial way. Because remember, colonization is still here with us. The West are still trying as much as possible to find a way of colonizing Africans. They stopped coming here to colonize us physically, and they have to find another way of colonizing us. And the seed might be the next frontier of colonization. So we have to be careful on the conversation on GMO. But number two, I agree with my brother that GMO, there must be clear labeling of GMO and non-GMO, and giving the consumer the right to choose what they want. Unfortunately, you'll not be choosing, because the GMO is going to be cheaper. And in an economy where you choose the cheapest thing, you are going to consume GMO.
And you'll say, the most important thing is I feel my stomach.
Exactly.
I'm hungry. That's exactly what I'm looking for.
Exactly. So it's not really a choice. If you at the end of it, we buy the cheapest thing in the supermarket. We don't buy the most quality thing or the best thing. We buy the cheapest thing.
All right. Thank you so much. All right, that does it for us here on the program. Thank you so much, Jim India, for your insights, and also Japheth Ombui for coming on for this particular conversation here on Lookuptv. Thank you so much. All right, see you again next time. My name is Brian Amoy.
Asante.